Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for stopping by. Obviously, you want to see this video and by the title. So, today's video, we are going to be reviewing a dupe for the Anastasia Beverly Hills Sultry palette by the brand AlterEgo, and that is called the Temptress palette. Both palettes have 14 shadows in it. I'll tell you a little bit about AlterEgo first. They are a cruelty-free company, and they ship out of Los Angeles. Comes in a nice box like this with their logo on the side. It also comes with this case matching and securely bubble wrapped. So if you're worried that it's coming from China or somewhere that it's going to be broken, rest assured, don't worry about that. They're a very, very nice company. I talked to them. They're super, super sweet, really great customer service. So let's get to the weight of each palette. By the way, this palette is discontinued, so this is why I'm doing this video. For anybody that missed out on the Sephora sale, that really wanted the Sultry palette and could not get it just in general, we have an option for you, possibly. Let's see at the end of the video. For the Sultry palette, each pan weighs 0.029 ounces. And for the Temptress palette, each pan weighs 0.653 ounces, so a lot more. Each have 14 shadows. Here's what the Sultry palette looks like. Mine is well used. I love it. Nice big mirror, 14 shadows here. Anastasia Beverly Hills. And we've got the nice sleek packaging here with the raised logo for the Temptress. We've got a nice big mirror and 14 shadows here. So let's take a look at these palettes. They look really, really similar. In fact, nearly identical. I'm going to start some swatches for you guys, and then I'll let you know the price of this. So what I'm going to do is swatch this entire row and then the corresponding shades to here, okay? And let's get to starting that. All right, so we've got them swatched. This top row would be the Temptress palette, and right underneath is the Anastasia Beverly Hills palette. They look identical to me, except this shade right here is a little bit of a difference, but still basically the same. They have the same kind of element. The Temptress palette feels very high quality, super duper soft, very little fallout, extreme black on the first swatch, and this here had a little bit of, you can tell, but swatches don't tell the whole story, but very pigmented so far, and they all look identical in my opinion. Here are the swatches for the second row. Top is the Temptress palette, and the bottom is the Anastasia Beverly Hills. Get a good look. They look extremely similar, if not identical. Just to give you a heads up as to, how the shadows look. Pretty much identical. All right, so I've prepped my eyes for shadow. I have powder underneath my eyes just in case for fallout situation. I know that Anastasia Beverly Hills does have a lot of fallout. Fallout does not bother me. I don't know if it bothers you, but here is the size comparison difference. So the Temptress palette is a little bit sleeker and longer than the Sultry palette. It does weigh more than the Sultry palette, which is very surprising. This is $16 and this was around $50. But, okay, I'm going to be using the Temptress on this side and the Sultry on this side. So I hope you guys don't get confused. Let's get started. And I have all different brushes. I've got brush cleaner here just in case. So I'm going to take my Smith 230 and going into the Temptress palette, I'm going into Lust. And I'm just going to build this as my transition shade. Very pigmented right on the first swipe. I barely dipped in and no fallout whatsoever, as you can see. Going into the Sultry palette, the corresponding shade would be Birch. I'm taking that on Morphe M433 and I'm putting that, building this for a transition shade. As you can see, Sultry. See if it builds as smooth. In my opinion, this one has a bit more pigment. This has a lot of fallout, as you can see here. So I'm going to have to build this up to match this one, and I'll be right back. In the Temptress palette, I'm going to take Uptown right here. So there's a little bit of fallout, nothing big or anything like that, on a Makeup Geek brush, and I'm going to place that a little bit below the first shade. Very pigmented. I'm having no patchiness issue at all, no struggles. Looks good. Corresponding shade in the Anastasia Beverly Hills Sultry palette. Just want to make sure. It would be Twig, and I'm taking that on a Sephora Pro. And look at the fallout in there. Right there. It's everywhere. You can't see. And I'm going to dust that off and go in. Really studying these two shades here. So we saw the swatches, and I'm going to do an eye look, trying to use a lot of the shades in it. So I think both eyes look almost identical. I would say this eye, the Anastasia Beverly Hills side, is just a little less pigmented and has more fallout so far. It's the only difference I see. Back to the Temptress palette, I'm going to take After Hours right here. I don't think you see very much fallout. A little bit did come off on there. I'm going to pack that right here on my outer corner. That is really pigmented. Okay, I barely dipped my brush in, and we have a lot of pigment going. So when going in this palette, go easy. I'm just going to drag this about halfway across. No, a third of the way across. Very pigmented, no fallout, looks great. Going into the Sultry palette, see, I'm going to take the corresponding shade Dystopian, and I'm going to take that on my Sigma E25, and there's a lot of fallout, as you can see, and put that right on the outer corner, same as I did on the other eye. I would say this is just a little less pigmented by a little bit. Sometimes that's a good thing if you're a beginner. But yeah, the AlterEgo palette is very, very pigmented and it's performing very well. No patchiness on any of the shadows so far, and no patchiness on any of the swatches either. So as you can tell, this side's a lot more pigmented than this side, so I have to build it up to match. Back into the Temptress palette, I'm going to take on my finger the shade Desire right here. And I'm going to put that, oh gosh, we have a travesty here, right on the middle of the eye, kind of covering a little bit of that darker shade. I'm going to keep that right here. So that's very pigmented, as you can see. Corresponding shade in the Sultry palette, I'm going to make sure you can see, is Teak right here. So I'm going to take that shade and put that on my outer corner and in the middle, just like the other eye. So what I'm noticing is that the AlterEgo side is much more pigmented. I'm going to go back in with Teak over here. And this is much darker over here. So that's what I'm noticing here. Not a big deal. Going back into the Temptress palette, I'm just doing a look that I always did with my Sultry palette that I loved so much. I'm going to take Sterling right here and put that on the inner third. I wiped my finger off on it. I have a makeup wipe right here. That is pigmented. I'm going to try to meld that a little bit better. Wow, that's gorgeous. All right, the corresponding shade in the Anastasia Beverly Hills palette would be Cyborg right here. I'm going to take that shade and put that on my inner corner. So far the eyes look identical except the middle shade there. It's the only difference. Let's take another shade. I'm going to go in with Rose Gold. It's called Champagne here in the Temptress palette. And I'm going to pat that on top of here. Go into the Anastasia Beverly Hills palette. And then taking Rose Quartz, I'm going to dot that on this side In my mirror, they look the same. I don't know about you guys, what you're seeing. But in my mirror, they look exactly the same. This is what I used to do with the Sultry palette all the time. Let me take 2 pencil brushes. For the Temptress palette, I'm going to take the shade, I guess, Seduction again, and place that right on my inner corner. Very, very pigmented. I'm impressed with that. And then different pencil brush, Sultry, going into Cyborg. Also very pigmented. I just need to build it up just a little bit more to match. All right. I'll take my pinky finger and go into the Temptress palette, and I'm going to take the shade Lace right here, put that as my brow bone highlight. That's a very nice pigmented shade. The corresponding shade in the Sultry palette is called Fresh. So I'll take that and place that on my brow bone, and that is also very pigmented. I'm going to put on some liner and lashes, and then we'll do the lower lash line. I just went ahead and finished my lower lash line really quick. I have somewhere to be actually. So I took from the Temptress palette on this side, I took Lust, which is what I used in the beginning, and the corresponding shade on this side from the Sultry palette would be Birch. And I just put some mascara on. So can you tell from this distance that I'm wearing 2 totally different eyeshadow palettes? In my opinion, it's a dupe. It is. I mean, clearly it was intended to be a dupe, but it functions just as well as the high end. This is $16. This is over $50 and is discontinued. If you were really, really wanting this palette and you can't get your hands on it, this is a great alternative for $16. The pigment is there. You saw the swatches. You can see them on my eyes in action. It turned out really, really beautifully. I can see there was no fallout, no patchiness. I think they look nearly identical, and yeah, I am definitely loving this palette. I love this palette as well, but for the price, I would say go with this palette if you were really, really wanting the Sultry palette. This is a spot-on dupe for it, and it's only $16. The brand is AlterEgo. I love the other AlterEgo palette. I did a video on it. It's a dupe for the NATASHA DENONA Goddess palette, or the Gold palette. The AlterEgo palette is called the Goddess palette, dupe for the NATASHA DENONA Gold palette. I also have that video. I will link it up above. Until I see you guys in my next video, well, let me know what you think down below first. But thank you all for watching. I love you. I see you in my next video. Bye.